I know you got this handout from Mrs. Rumpke, and if you haven't read it thoroughly yourself yet, I advise you to do it. I'm just going to hit a few highlights about advice for the exam. Make sure to use the formula sheet provided instead of relying on your memory. The formula sheets, the one that you're familiar with that you use in class, will be at the beginning of Section 1 and Section 2 of the exam, the free response and the multiple choice. Multiple choice being first. The formula, or the tables, like the chi-squared normal model table and the chi-squared t-table normal table, will be, and z-scores, will be at the end of each section. I think the free response section may have a booklet for writing your answers in, and maybe have a separate booklet that you can pull out that has formula sheets. I'm not positive if they've changed that or not, but make sure that you keep that keep referring to that formula sheet. It only takes a second to check, and if you think you remembered it and you remember it wrong, it's kind of silly to miss it because you didn't check. Multiple choice questions. Make sure you read it carefully and read all of the answer choices, because sometimes there might be one that's really close but it's not exactly right, and if you had kept reading, you would have found the better answer choice. Don't treat this test like an obstacle course where you have to go in order and finish each question to get to the next one, and like overcome that obstacle to get to the next. Think of it more like a treasure hunt. You're trying to show off how much you know, so feel free to skip over questions you don't know and go on to the ones you do know. Of course, make sure when you're bubbling in your Scantron thing that you also skip over that, and maybe circle it or something so you know that you skipped that question and you can come back to it. But make sure that you show off what you know and take the time to do as many questions as you can. Also, sometimes if you skip something, you've read the question, you skip it, you come back to it, your brain is working on that question. When you come back to it, you will have read something in a later part of the test, or your subconscious mind will be at work, and you'll be able to answer it when you come back. So don't get stuck staring at a problem for 10 minutes that you don't know how to answer. That's a waste of time. You should have plenty of time for multiple choice, though, because you have about 2 minutes and 15 seconds per problem, and a lot of them won't take that long, so you should probably be fine time-wise, but I would skip over the ones that you don't know and come back to them. There's no penalty for guessing, so fill in the answer. If the answer is numerical and you don't get the exact value but get something that's really close, sometimes I would just go ahead and put that after if you've checked and make sure that's the best you can do on that problem. Sometimes there's just slight differences because of the method of finding the answer, calculator versus table, rounding, and that sort of thing. Now, free response questions, time is more of an issue because you're writing, and some people take a long time to think of how to say things and all that. So one thing I would highly suggest, and my previous students have said that this was a good strategy for them. Even though this might seem like a waste of time to you, stop and read through all of the questions before you start the free response part of the exam, including the investigative task. Do that for 2 reasons. Number one, you can kind of plan your strategy of, okay, which problems to do first, because you want to make sure you show off everything you know. So you want to do all the problems you know how to do first, and not get tripped off on something you really don't remember how to do and sit there thinking about it. So if you read through the problems and you think, oh, number 2, definitely know how to do that one, well then do number 2 first. Do the ones in numbers 1 through 5 that you definitely know how to do first and you can do quickly. Then go work on number 6. Usually number 6, you can probably get 1/2 of it pretty well with stuff you've learned. The other half will require more thought, but go ahead and do the part of number 6 that seems pretty straightforward to you and get that done so that you can maximize your points on number 6. Then go back and pick up the things, okay, I think now with a little thought I can get these other ones done. So you want to put your first effort into doing the things that you really know how to do, so you can show off and get your maximum points with what you know how to do. Also, I have had students who've said that really did work, that their subconscious mind actually did start working on stuff, and when they came back to a problem after having read it and skipped it, they did know what to do. It's like they kind of had figured it out. Answer the question. Sometimes in the course of going through the whole process, you forget what the original question was asking, and you never actually answer the original question. So make sure after you've written your answer that you go back and reread that original question. Make sure, did I actually answer the final question that I was supposed to answer? Don't write too much. If you really don't know the answer, just trying to write as many things as you think might be the answer could hurt you more than it helps you. For two reasons. If you, for example, you're checking conditions and you can't remember if this is, you can't remember which conditions go with this test, and so you just write down all the conditions you know, well, they're not going to just ignore the wrong ones. If you might have all the right ones, but then if you also write down some wrong ones, they're going to knock you off for that. So it's better to just write down the things you know are right and just leave the rest off if you're not sure sometimes, than to just start writing stuff hoping it's right. Also, do not write what are called parallel solutions, like if I did it this way, here would be the answer. If I did it this way, here would be the answer. So I'll just write them both down, and they'll give me, hopefully I'll get one right. Well, the graders, they're called readers, are instructed to grade both solutions and give you the lower of the two scores. So if you're not sure which one is which, at least cross one of them out, and you'd have a 50-50 chance of getting the better score anyway. Also, don't take the time to erase everything. If you start on a problem and you realize, oh, I got it totally, I really screwed that up and I need to start over, just make an X through it and just start over. You can also, if you accidentally write an answer into the wrong section, you can, put a box around it and mark and say, this really should be in section B and I put it in section A or something. Don't waste your time erasing and rewriting things other places. Make sure to always use context, context, context in all your questions. Make sure that you're actually making statistical answers to your questions. So when a question asks for statistical evidence, for example, you're going to usually do a hypothesis test. If you are, excuse me, if they ask you which would be right, this or this, or what's going to happen here, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now as an example, but students tend to just use their own common sense to answer a question instead of actually using the statistical reasoning that they've been taught in the course. So if they give you a table or a graph, you're expected to look at that table and graph and use the information in there. If they want you should know when they're asking you to estimate, use a confidence interval, to use statistical evidence, use a hypothesis test. Do those things, make calculations, not just spout off your opinion about something. Okay, so there's nothing in here, I would say 99% of the time, that you're never going to be giving your opinion. You're going to be giving statistics. You're going to be using statistics to justify your answer in all cases. Now, what about showing work? Let me actually just kind of give you a general idea, and then we'll talk more specifically about another inference in another video. But the simpler the problem is, the more important it is to show work. So if they ask you the probability of something, and you just say, oh, 7 out of 10, and you write down 0.7, you better write down 7 out of 10 on your paper. Because if you just put 0.7, almost always they're going to say, we don't know how you got that 7 out of 10, or that 0.7. Did you round something that was really 0.666? Did you Did you do 7 out of 10? Did you do 0.71 out of 0.99? I mean, there's all different ways you might arrive at 0.7, so you better show how you did it. You better show exactly what you did. Now, what about what about inference tests and those long, complicated formulas for finding standard deviation and doing all that? That's a different story, and I'll get to that in another video, but kind of the general rule is, if you're sure you know the formula and you can write it out correctly, do it. If you're not sure that you can do the formula and write it out correctly, then it would be better to just do it on your calculator and put the calculator numbers that you get labeled carefully to show what each one of them are on an inference problem. And like I said, I'll talk about that more later. Sometimes it's better to write less if you're not sure if you're right about the formula. But on the simple ones where you're sure you know how to do the work, show it. Definitely show it. Because if you show the work correctly and you accidentally put it in your calculator wrong and get the wrong answer, you'll still get the question right. But if you did it correctly, if you know how to do the problem and you just put it in your calculator wrong and get the wrong answer and you don't show any work, you'll definitely get it wrong. So make sure to show work when you know what you're doing. This is also important. If a question asks you to make a choice between two options, often they're option A and option B on the AP exam, make sure that you talk about both options. Talk about, if you choose A, for example, say why you chose A and why you did not choose B. Don't just talk about one of the two options, talk about both of them. Another important tip. Even if you can't answer an entire question, answer as many parts as you can. What if you have part A, B, and C in a question, and part B or part C asks you to refer back to part B or requires the answer from part B? You can make up an answer for the part you didn't know how to do and then use that answer in the part you do know how to do and say, if the answer to part B was blah, 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 here's how I would do part C, and then you would go ahead and do it. That is a perfectly legitimate way to get your answer to part C. Also, if it says based on the graph or based on part C or based on part A or whatever, if it says that in the question, make sure that you refer to the graph or refer to part A or refer to part B. Refer to whatever they say based on this. Refer to that in your answer. Link your answer to that thing they're asking you to base your answer on. Make sure you discuss what the characteristic of the graph or the previous answer and why it is that is being used to answer that next part of the question. Make sure that it's obvious what you're referring to. Okay, that's enough for this. You can read the rest, and if you have more questions, feel free to email me.